Tiki, are you surprised the WFAN still standing without me? I'm a little surprised, to be quite honest with you.
We know we're self-sufficient. You remember when I was on the national side, Spike, we didn't have a boss for like a year.
Yes. Yeah, you guys were fine. Yeah.
Exactly. We'll figure it out. We're grown men some of the time.
Well, yeah, I was going to say some of you. Some of you.
Bosses are overrated, right. Tiki. We know it. Bosses are overrated. Overrated, man.
What's the
I can't disagree.
Enough out of both of you. What's the number one fan thing right now? Is it Rogers? Is it Soto? What's the what's the lead?
Well, unfortunately, it's Soto. And I hate this about baseball free agency is that nothing happens forever. And all we do is speculate and speculate. Then you start hypothetical, scenarios off of speculation. And so it becomes this this echo chamber of nonsense. There's nothing real to talk about, but that's New York and baseball.
Yeah.
I remember when I was playing, I'd have these great days, unbelievable Sunday afternoon. Maybe I was playing the Eagles and maybe I'd miss a tackle or something like that. And I'd be like, man, I'm going to be on the back page. And what's on the back page? Baseball. It's always baseball. But I guess our football teams are making us earn that because, both of them stink right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will ask this though, real quick about the Soto situation, because it is a hot topic there in New York.
Right.
What's the general sense? Is he's going to be in New York with one of those two teams, or do you feel like he's leaving New York?
God, it's so complicated, Ike, because it feels like Steve Cohen has the most money, and so he's going to be, for the Mets, is going to be the front runner. But the reality is all these guys have a ton of money. The Dodgers are owned by a private equity firm, and they spent $1 billion in contracts last season. I know Ohtani's was deferred and everything like that, but there's so much money in baseball, and we don't know what the owners are actually making. And so we can say, well, this guy has more money than that guy, but we don't actually know that. And so it just becomes this lack of knowledge, and it all depends on what Soto wants. I think he's going to stay with the Yankees. I think he's playing a lot of these other teams, the Red Sox, the Toronto Blue Jays, even the Mets, just to get the biggest number from the organization that he believes can help him win another championship. But he'd go to Phillies for all we know. Right? He could go to the Red Sox. I don't think they're going to spend the money because with the Fenway Sports Group and Liverpool and all the holdings that they have. But, it gets frustrating because I just want it done. In football free agency is like it happened. It was already done.
It's like 2 days.
Saquon free agency.
Yeah.
Right. Well, not even. Saquon signed agency. You know what I mean? So it just becomes this maddening speculation, which I can't stand. I want to talk about real things. I don't want to talk about speculation.
Well, okay, so we'll talk about real things and not speculation. Then. So before we get to Saquon's season, the last Tiki Saquon thing that was in the ether was when he signed with the Eagles, and you had the little clip about him being dead to you, and then Saquon reacted poorly to that. Have you spoken to him since then, or
we called a game. We called one of their games, and so we sat in a row. It was fine. Saquon reacted to the radio bit, which you can never do because radio, as you guys know, and Spike is my boss. You kind of taught me this. You're creating one-day stories, right? You're creating these things that create a reaction. It's never personal, or at least it shouldn't be. For me, it's definitely not because I have the privilege to actually know the people that I'm talking about. Right? Some people can scream and yell and say this guy's a whatever negative words you want to call him, but they have the luxury of not having a personal relationship with that person. That's not the case for me, and I take it seriously to be entertaining, but also not take myself seriously or my opinion that seriously.
Tiki Barber with us. All right, so Tiki, we're doing a thing here. Saquon, as far as the odds go, is the second favorite for MVP. We're doing a thing here called Backs for Barkley, where we get legendary NFL backs to say that whether you think Saquon Barkley is the MVP of the league so far this season. So, Tiki Barber, I ask you, so far, do you think Saquon Barkley is the MVP of the NFL?
Saquon Barkley is the MVP of the NFL, and I think it's close, obviously, because you're starting to see the Josh Allen beat the Chiefs and become this enormous, favorite. But when I think about what Saquon has brought to the Eagles, don't forget a year ago, we almost were, as a narrative from a national media standpoint, wanted to fire Nick Sirianni, right? And all of a sudden, it's kind of gone away. And why? It's because they're so dominant. And they're dominant because Saquon Barkley has been a difference maker. Now, I don't think that running backs are ever going to get back to that platform in the Eric Dickerson world or, the generation before. But when you have one that's as great as Saquon has been this year, you can't ignore him. The last time I remember this happening was the Todd Gurley one when he was with the Rams. I think they maybe had just moved to Los Angeles. And he clearly was the best player in the NFL. But because it's a quote-unquote quarterback award, they gave him the Offensive Player of the Year award, and then the MVP went to Tom Brady. And I just remember thinking about how unfair that was, how just because Tom's a great quarterback and he plays for a great team doesn't mean that quarterbacks automatically deserve this award. Saquon's going to rush for 20-something hundred yards, maybe 2,200 yards this year. He's actually second in the league in 20-plus runs. Derrick Henry has him by one. But how many 60 or 50 or 30 or 50, 80-yard runs have we seen from Saquon this year? It's rare what you're seeing. And I think this year, of all years, he deserves to be the MVP of the NFL.
Yeah, I love the beauty of the position being in the spotlight once again. Listen, dude, you were arguably the top nemesis of the Eagles during the time that I played here. When you think about all the teams we played, and especially in our division, Jim Johnson will tell you, Tiki Barber, number 21, was the dude that we had to come into a season trying to figure out how do you not let him beat you. And just the idea that having that position back in the spotlight as a focal point of a franchise, I can still appreciate that. I know you can still appreciate that as a former running back, but it has to feel good.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, it has to feel good to know that a position that people tried to sort of diminish and almost try to make it stink has come back. Not even just this year, even McCaffrey last year, right? And Derrick Henry. So, yeah, we've had some great years.
McCaffrey is great. The biggest issue with McCaffrey is that he's setting the position back a little bit because he can't stay healthy, right? Remember, he got paid. He's making $19 million a year, but he's on IR again. He missed most of the season, and then he comes back and he tears his PCL. And so it feels like, if we have a great one, fantastic, but he's always going to get hurt, And I hate that about the narrative around the position. But I love that Saquon and Derrick Henry are doing this. Joe Mixon is doing it down in Houston. Tony Pollard, all these guys on new teams. Yeah. Josh Jacobs, obviously out in Green Bay. Like everybody they went and got a free agent veteran running back. They're thriving, and I love that because it doesn't mean that the position is dead just because you're not with your mama. I always used to say nobody loves you like your mama. The team that drafts you, right? They're going to put the most into you. But I think with running backs, it takes a little bit of a development. You become a star. You're a star. Someone else really appreciates that and brings you in and utilizes you the right way. Because when I look at what the Eagles are doing versus what the Giants did last year with the Giants, it was all like inside zone and duo runs, just run downhill and try to find something. This year with the Eagles, like they have gap scheme, they have tosses, they have these split zones where they have the tight end going one way and the offensive line is blocking the other, and it allows Saquon to be patient, find a hole, and use his athleticism to create these big plays. And so he's in a better place. And by the way, going back to what you asked me before, Spike, this is why we got frustrated with Saquon, because we knew he was going to be amazing down there. We knew with an offensive line that has some elite players up front that he was going to be exactly the player that we wanted. We just couldn't produce it for him.
We're with Tiki Barber right now from Evan and Tiki, legendary New York Giant, unfortunately. Good guy, even though he's a Giant. So you mentioned with the Giants, and I think to your point, everybody in New York knew that Tiki Barber had more in, not Tiki Barber, Saquon Barkley had more in him than we saw with the Giants. But
no doubt.
Did you know that this was in him?
Well, yeah, because we saw it his rookie season, Spike. Right? We saw this explosiveness, and there was this creative nature to the play calling. But now we're 3 head coaches later, and I don't know how 4 offensive coordinators later. It's just like the innovation for the run game just disappeared. This is what Ike was alluding to, and it frustrates the hell out of me. Ike, you'll remember this because we used to have a bunch of I can't use the word, but we were trying to fool you in our run game. Yeah. You know what I mean? We'd line up in a bunch formation to the right, and we'd either throw a toss crack out that way where the wide receiver's cracking the defensive end, a guard is pulling around out in front, or we get you looking at that trips, and we'd run, out the backside, or we'd do a scissors play where it was a misdirection. I start one way, the guard starts one way, then we both loop back around the other way. Like, we were creative with our run game. And so when I look at the Eagles, that's what they're doing. And so the only way you have successful run game is if you have a successful running back, is if you have a successful game plan. And so I got to give Kellen Moore a ton of credit for not just saying, all right, we're going to run inside zone. All right, we're just going to run, Bob, put a tight end who doesn't even know how to block as a fullback and go run up and block a linebacker, right? No, so the creativity has created the opportunity for Saquon, and Saquon's taking advantage of it. And look, I'm a Giant fan, obviously. I root for the Giants. The Eagles are like this hate-respect team that I have right now. But I got to tell you, calling that game that we called a couple of weeks ago, the one where he jumped backwards over that dude, it just made me appreciate how greatness in the running back position, but also the player. I appreciate the hell out of Saquon because he's awesome to watch.
I gotta. You brought this up because I still can think back to my exact feeling in that moment, and I was in the press box when he did that, and you were calling the game. What was your feeling when Saquon had that sort of backwards hurdle over the Jacksonville Jaguar defender?
My thought, and I said it on the air, was who even thinks to do that? You know what I mean? Because it was like he set it up. Like he knew he was going to do it, or he knew he wanted to do something to that guy because he saw him, a couple of moves before, but it was like, who thinks to do that? Right? It's one thing to spin and maybe I'll just, juke him in the moment and get him going one way and then run through the tackle. But who thinks to jump over a guy? And look, I don't know if he's ever going to get in a situation. Exactly.
Yeah.
Get in a situation to do that again. But it's an iconic play. And in some ways, even though it was a short game and on a pass, it wasn't even a run, it defines this excellence that Saquon is having this year. You know what I mean? Because it's unique, but also awesome. So I hate that I talk this glowingly about it because he's an Eagle, but how do you not appreciate it? You know what I mean? It's the same situation that I had when I used to think about Derrick Henry and when he was in Tennessee. And it wasn't because he had these 2,000-yard seasons or these big game, 200-yard games. It was because you get into a 4-minute situation. You know what I'm talking about, Ike? Everybody knows what's happening. Derrick Henry is getting the ball. There are 9 guys around the line of scrimmage. Maybe there's a deep safety. Maybe it's cover 0. Look, whatever. Everybody knows what's happening. And he's hitting his head on the goalpost from 60 yards. And it's like, dude, how do you do this? And so you just appreciate excellence at the position because we don't see it or get it appreciated enough anymore. It's all quarterbacks and wide receivers and, who can throw out the big plays. But the reality with Saquon is that and Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon, you're starting to see the big play in the run game become big again. And that's why wide receivers got paid, right? Scoring touchdowns increases 4 times when you can have a 20-plus yard play. It used to, for the last decade, it felt like you could only get that in the wide receiver game. But you're starting to see running backs get you those plus 20-yard plays, and I think it's awesome.
All right, Tiki, 2 quick ones before we let you go. 2 quick New York ones. That we already asked you about Soto. You think he stays with the Yankees. Do you think Daboll and Shane keep their jobs?
I do. I mean, it's been very dissected about the Daniel Jones situation, and you could tell just by watching Hard Knocks. I won't say they were done with Daniel Jones, but you could tell it wasn't the perfect situation for them, and so. I think without them having drafted their own quarterback yet, they're going to get another chance, but it's got to be a quick turnaround. It's got to be a CJ Stroud. We drafted the guy and he's playing right away. Or even Bo Nix. It's got to be one of those type of situations where you see the progress almost immediately.
And then last one, is there any chance Aaron Rodgers is on the Jets next year?
I can't see it. I think that place needs a complete refresh. I get the idea. And when before Aaron Rodgers was injured, it made sense. I mean, I went over there 2 preseasons ago, and the enthusiasm was like amazing. I live in Florham Park, so it was just right down the street. And everybody was talking about how this was going to work, right? We're finally going to be relevant. We're finally going to be that team that you have to reckon with. And then he gets hurt, and he's just not the same anymore. The things that he used to do really easily, he can't do easily anymore. And so a great thought experiment failed because of injury. And that happens when you have a 39-year-old quarterback. All
right. So even though he's an Eagle, officially Tiki Barber is a back for Barkley this year in the MVP race. We have you.
Not even a question. No doubt about it.
I love it. Well, you can hear Tiki every day if you want to hear about New York sports. I don't know why I do want to do that, but you can hear Tiki with Evan Roberts.
Hey, he's the lesser
Spike,
of the.
Guess what?
He's the lesser.
Spike.
Yeah.
Guess what? The New York Red Bulls. The New York Red Bulls,
here we
soccer.
Go.
I know you hate when I hate playing soccer.
Yes.
The Red Bulls are playing for the MLS Cup. Let's go Red Bulls.
Dude, once every 2 weeks, I would have to tell Tiki, no, enough with the soccer, soccer. So every day, 2 to 6:30, Evan and Tiki on WFAN. Tiki, we appreciate you.
And I was going to say, he's the lesser of the two barbers when it comes to the barber hate.
Yes.
The lesser evil. The lesser evil.
Yes.
Lesser evil.
Yes.
You guys hate him much more.
Much more. All right, Tiki. Thank you, man.
All right, brother.
Be good, fellas.
All right, see you, man.
Appreciate y'all.